group out there working hard is a fierce grassroots organization dedicated to protecting the constitutional sovereignty and property rights of Louisiana citizens. Of course, I'm talking about LCAG, the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Co-founder Chris Alexander is joining us here on the Ringside Politics Hotline. Hey, Chris, good morning. Welcome.
Well, hey, Jeff, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm doing great. Appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. I've been wanting to have you on since I received an email from you about this issue, and we've talked about it some. We have more than 100 Louisiana state employees signing what's called an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, with Governor Landry's office. Some are calling it a gag order. Chris, is there a problem with this?
Jeff, there's a huge problem with this because it conceals these agreements completely cloak these development projects and these agreements between big corporations and local municipalities and state officials in secrecy. I mean, these big agreements involve big data centers. They involve carbon capture and sequestration. And these corporations are getting huge tax breaks, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. That's our money. We're talking about the health of our water, our environment with these big industrial projects. And the citizens, by these NDAs, are basically being shut out of the process until they're about to drop the dirt and start building. And why? First of all, it's a violation of the constitutional right of transparency. Citizens have a right to know what their government is doing. And this is it's unbelievable. And the question,
it's the opposite of transparency, right? I mean,
it's the opposite of transparency. And the question you have to ask is this: why are LED, Louisiana Economic Development, and these corporations insisting upon cloaking all of these agreements and the details of these agreements in secrecy? That certainly does not do much to suggest to the citizens that these things are good for them. But whether they're good for them or not, whether this is genuine economic development or not, the citizens absolutely have a right to know what is being done with their tax dollars, their zoning, whether or not these projects pose a threat to their health or to the environment, and they have a right to weigh in on this. I mean, this is not we don't believe in shadow governments, Jeff. I don't believe in shadow governments, and I don't think that's what our founding fathers stood for.
Why do you think these things have been, because according to reports, the John Bel Edwards administration didn't do any of this. I mean, there weren't any of these NDAs in the last administration. Why do you think this is being done?
I think, Jeff, and I'm not a skeptic. I try to be an eternal optimist about things. But I think that probably the reason why this is being done is because I think the parties and the players involved in this understand that if the citizens knew the full details and the full implications of these big deals and these agreements and these projects, they probably would be opposed to it. And would rise up against it. And so I think they're trying to get the football as far down the field as they can before the citizens really understand what's going on. By then it's too late to do anything about it. Look, the way I look at it is this, Jeff. If you have something good to sell to the state of Louisiana, come in and make your pitch. Come in and make your pitch. Let the people know what's going on, and let them decide whether or not they want this in their communities or not. I'm talking about the carbon capture and sequestration. I'm talking about the big data centers and other things. But you can't do this behind their backs. And Jeff, I can tell you, I've never seen, it's been a long time, maybe you have, but I haven't seen the type of response, negative response, adverse response to these NDAs among citizens across the state that I've seen here. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I mean, people are, I think we saw it in the Senate campaign. People are waking up to the CCS problem. And now these data centers, I think now this is getting even more attention. People are wondering about these centers. And now we find out that a tool that this administration has been using is the opposite of what we were promised: transparency, secrecy. and all these state senators. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, the vast majority of the legislature signed these NDAs. Is that correct, Chris?
77% of the state Senate has signed an NDA, Jeff, and I want to say, 15 or 20 probably of the state representatives have signed them. But yeah, the overwhelming majority of the Senate. But interestingly, Jeff, since the pushback and the public outcry against these NDAs, and they're starting to rescind. They're starting to rescind their agreement. Like I think Senator Valerie Hodges, I think Senator Bob Henskins, and several others have said, we don't want to be part of this. And so we want out. We don't want to be bound by this. And I think that is...
But I have to question, why would they sign it in the first place, Chris?
Yes.
I mean, we can't excuse them for signing it in the first place, right?
Absolutely not. And why would they have voted in 2024 for a law now that barely passed in the Senate because we fought it very, very hard? They had to have a revote on it, but it was in 2024 that the enabling legislation that authorized these confidentiality agreements was enacted. So our goal is to work very hard, relentlessly, in the upcoming session to repeal these NDAs, because I think I think the citizens overwhelmingly support openness and transparency in our government. But Jeff, I think they need to pay a price for it. Frankly, I think that the citizens and the voters have every right and reason to know. The 50 or so or more now elected officials who have signed these NDAs, and then of course,
Chris,
Landry.
Hang with us if you can. Another segment with our special guest, Chris Alexander of LaCag. We've been talking about these NDAs rampant throughout Louisiana state government. The vast majority of the Louisiana State Senate, 77%, have signed them. Also, 121 current or former officials in the Landry administration, from senior aides to junior temps, have signed NDAs, binding them to secrecy about what they learn on the job. And some have called this a gag order. Others have called this instilling a culture of fear. But the governor's attorney says that this protects the integrity of the governor's decisions as well as a public trust. Chris, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I think, Jeff, there's certainly as John F. Kennedy even said, that there is a place for discretion in terms of sensitive matters and sensitive topics that perhaps should not be disclosed, at least for a period of time. I certainly understand that. But there's a massive difference between a narrow non-disclosure agreement that, perhaps protects intellectual property of a corporation or highly sensitive topics, and these broad-based NDAs that essentially cloak public matters in complete and total secrecy. In fact, Jeff, if you look at the NDAs, the NDAs that the executive officials, the 121 that you're talking about here, as bad as the ones that the elected officials are signing, the ones that his office and the executive branch are signing are far worse. These NDAs are perpetual, and they prohibit any employee of the governor or the executive branch to disclose anything at all of any nature without express written approval of the governor. He is a public servant. We elected him to do our bidding. And this is a government of, by, and for the people. And it seems as though these NDAs cloak his administration under this veil of secrecy. And I think it's very, very alarming and very antithetical to the nature of a constitutional democracy that's accountable to the people. I think it's quite alarming, and it does. I agree. I do believe that it creates an atmosphere of fear and intimidation and coercion in government, which is just the opposite of what we need.
And it does go along with people's views of this governor as being someone who is power hungry and trying to accumulate more influence, more power, subjugate people, and control people. This is another way to do that. The last administration didn't use this at all. I'm not saying the Edwards administration was that great, but certainly I think on this issue they were. And
you're exactly right.
You know, I mean, the former chief of staff said, "Hey, I couldn't have done my job if I had to adhere to an agreement like this."
Well, you're exactly right, and I think under the Edwards administration, the way that they explain the reason why they didn't have these NDAs is that, you know, when you hire someone in a position of government, the presumption is that, you know, they understand sort of instinctively when things are sensitive, when they're not, when things should be disclosed or not, and there's a certain amount of discretion that is involved in that. But I think locking people down in these perpetual non-disclosure agreements, I think it creates an atmosphere of great mistrust, fear, and, you know, as I said earlier, Jeff, I think the citizens of Louisiana are really revolting against this idea because they know that you know, this is a government of, by, and for the people. The government is accountable to us, and we have a right to know what's going on.
Well, my worry is that, you know, this governor with big donor friends, like he was able to get accomplished in the Senate race, will squash any kind of opposition that does result to anything he wants. I mean, he owns the Louisiana legislature. I mean, has a legislature really ever stood up to him? Would they stand up to him next year on this issue, Chris?
Well, I think that they're going to have to make a very tough decision. Are you going to cater and cower to the governor in the legislature, completely abdicate your responsibility to exercise oversight, which is their responsibility, by the way, constitutionally? Or are you going to be loyal to your voters and to the people who elected you, especially now that it's coming up at re-election time, Jeff? I can assure you that they will be thinking about that, these legislators, and LeCag will be broadly exposing anyone who has signed these NDAs, anyone who voted statutorily for these NDAs, and anyone who opposes our effort in the upcoming session to repeal these NDAs.
Will this be one of your top priorities next year, Chris?
Absolutely. It will be in the top 3 of our priorities. We have 2 or 3 other matters that we're going to be working on, constitutional amendments that will diminish this draconian power that the governor has over legislators. The reason why they're so afraid of him, Jeff, is because he has the power of the pen, and if they oppose him, he guts their infrastructure projects. And that's what's been going on in this state for a long, long time, and they're very, very afraid of that. And, of course, they have their own legislation they want to have passed.
Well, isn't it preferable to stand on principle than to cower? I mean,
Absolutely.
if you lose a project in your district, you lose a project in your district. You call them out for doing that. But, hey, you don't compromise your principles just to suck up to this guy. So let me ask you this. What are your other priorities for next year so we can help you spread the word about that?
One of the priorities that we have, and this is Paul Hurd. You know Paul, a great constitutional attorney.
Oh, yeah.
He, one of his proposals is a bill that will allow any bill to automatically advance to a full vote on the floor even if a locked-in political committee kills it. If 20 representatives vote to take it to the floor and have a full floor vote, it would have to go to the floor no matter what a committee does on a bill. That's number one, and that would make sure that things get a full vote. And secondly, a constitutional amendment that prohibits the governor from exercising a line item veto on any matter under a certain threshold. So if a legislator votes his conscience and votes on principle against the governor cannot then gut that legislator's infrastructure project or funds to their district if it's under a certain amount of money. He just cannot do it. And I think that would free up, because many of these projects that the governor goes in, many of these infrastructure projects that he vetoes are under a certain threshold amount of money. They're not huge, massive projects, but they're very important to local districts. So if we can make it to where the governor simply no longer has this unilateral, expansive authority to exercise his line item veto on any project he wants, then that would also free up legislators to vote their conscience. And so those are very important priorities for LeCag. But, Jeff, you're right. You're exactly right. No matter what the outcome is, these representatives have to remember who elected them, and everything they do should reflect their fidelity to the people, not to the governor, especially a governor who has demonstrated routinely that he has an agenda that is simply inconsistent with the will of a substantial majority of Louisiana citizens, as is reflected in his current approval ratings.
Final question, and we'll have you back on often here as we gear up for the next year. So do you see anyone deciding to run against him? I mean, will there be competition? I mean, will there be a choice? I know it's tough to defeat an incumbent governor, but it has happened in the past.
Jeff, I've heard a couple of names.
Will it happen this time?
I've heard a couple of names. Not at liberty to say right now who they are, but I am pretty confident that there will be some legitimate opposition for Governor Landry's reelection. I think they sense that he's got vulnerability. He has a lot of money, but he's deeply, deeply unpopular now in the state. And I believe that there will be at least one, maybe more, candidates running against him.
We saw what happened in the Senate race. We certainly saw a race that looked like it was extremely close, if not maybe John Fleming leading. Then all of a sudden on Election Day, Julia Letlow wins by 14 points. Did that, raise any questions to you? I mean, it just seems like the result there was so out of line with all the polls. I don't know. I just found that sort of a curious result, maybe just due to all the money that poured in at the end for her.
Jeff, I think that I don't truly trust fully our election system in Louisiana. I really don't. I just do, and I believe that we have serious problems with our election system here, from the computer manipulations to one of the big issues in that race, Jeff, was the massive amount of dark out-of-state PAC money that was spent lying about John Fleming over and over and over. It's just relentless. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And that is just disgraceful. And I think that has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, including a lot of Republicans, quite frankly. I really do. Also, last point I'll make is this. I don't think you can underestimate a Trump endorsement, although, it was brought out pretty broadly that endorsement was manipulated and really ran through President Trump. Didn't have full information when he made that endorsement, but I do believe that accounted for significantly in the race, because President Trump is
without that she doesn't run. Without that, nobody really knows her, and without that, she doesn't have a chance, because she really couldn't run on her record, because there was really nothing there except support for DEI.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Jeff. There was really nothing there. All she had was a President Trump flotation device, as I called it. And other than that, there was really nothing there. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the general election. I'm a principled Republican. I'm going to try to do what I think is the right thing in this general election. But I can tell you it was absolutely reprehensible, the extent to which a very honorable man was defamed, and her silence in the face of it.
I completely agree. All right, Chris, we'll visit again soon. Thank you, sir. We'll link to the site. Y'all check out lecag.org and support this great group for what they do for the state of Louisiana. We appreciate you, sir. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Great work. Bye.